last. We will start over with our student board member, Ms. Katrina Yee. She'll ask you questions, and we'll be going down the line. And you will have 3 minutes total with each board member to answer their questions. So depending on how quickly you answer their questions, will be more questions that they can ask you. At the end, you will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. So with that, as soon as you say your first word, we will start your time for your opening statement.
Okay. Good evening. I am part of the 50% of the residents without a child in the district, but I am someone who also strongly supports the schools and one of those folks who voted in support of Measure Q&R. I've lived and worked in the neighborhood and the community for 14 years. I'm a native Californian. I love Sacramento, and it's a great place to be. I currently work as the Chief Strategy Officer for the California Medical Association. And I recognized early in life that education was an opportunity to better myself, and was fortunate that the public schools I went to had great teachers, a very supportive environment from the community, and a lot of support. I will be committed to ensuring that our students are our #1 goal and that they have every opportunity to be successful, to graduate and be college and career ready when we're done. I've worked and volunteered in many education fields. I sit on the Board of Governors for Occidental College, where I did my undergraduate work. I serve on the USC's Sacramento Center as their advisory board, where I received my master's degree. I attended the American Legion Boys State Youth and Government program as a high school student, and learned what it means and what is required to be an active and engaged citizen. I've served them as a volunteer faculty for over 20 years, teaching today's students those same lessons. I was selected by then Superintendent Jack O'Connell to help write the state's career technical education curriculum frameworks. I was very proud when that was adopted by the State Board of Education. It was a 2-year process going through that, and I learned a lot about the education and education community. I was asked by current State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Torlakson, to serve on his transition team, which I do, and subsequently on Team California for Healthy Kids, where I serve now, and it's a project to teach healthy lifestyles to students and kids in our schools. When I worked for the state legislature, I helped write and get passed the California Student Safety and Violence Protection Act of 2000 when I worked for Speaker Bob Hertzberg, which required school districts to enact non-bullying guidelines for schools, which remarkably weren't required at the time. So that was something I was very proud to work on. In the community, I currently serve on the City Parks and Recreation Commission. I'm an appointee. I work closely with the city and the Parks Department to ensure our parks are well maintained as possible with our tight resources. Personally, I'm very interested in childhood obesity and wellness programs for both students and staff. I was very surprised that one of the fastest growth areas of the district's budget is in healthcare costs, up 10%. And I would enjoy working on wellness programs for both students and staff. I have significant experience working with labor and understand collective bargaining rights and the give and take in union negotiations. I think I could help there. I'm a hardworking individual committed to public education, and giving students the opportunity to succeed like I succeeded, being able to have a good public education. I would be honored to have your support and pledge to give this job 100%. I appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. Now we will start with student board member Katrina Yee.
It's not on, okay. As I see it, students are the #1 stakeholders in regards to public education. How would you ensure that student interests are included in your decisions as a board member?
As someone who's worked a lot with youth programs, I would be very interested in learning what your opinions were, and would work with the student councils at the different schools to engage them and to find out how students can be involved in education. I'm someone who really believes in a transparent, open process, and I think that's something that would be beneficial for students, and I believe in hands-on learning. Working in the career technical education field, I think that's something that's really important, and it would be an opportunity for students to partner in those kind of programs, whether it's school gardens or community service or doing work with city government or with the government of the school board. I think there's a lot of opportunities to work with students and to get their input.
And what is your view on student voice and the value of student interests?
I think that student voice is critical. The reason that all these folks have chosen to serve, and that why I'd be willing to serve, is to promote students and to try to help you and your fellow classmates be as successful as possible. So I think the voice that you have a big responsibility as a board member yourself to bring that voice. You're representing the students, you're on that board. I think it's really critical for board members to listen and to have the opportunity and promote students being able to participate in the decision making.
How would you reach out to students within the community beyond these board meetings?
I think the most important thing is giving students the opportunity to do hands-on learning. I mentioned that briefly before, like career technical education. Have the chance to partner, to work with people if you're interested in a job in medicine, if you're interested in a job in healthcare or apprenticeship in a building trades union or being a lawyer. I'd really work to try to advocate getting students to be mentored and have the ability to look and see the jobs that are out there so you understand what you have to do in school to be prepared to do that. So there's a lot of different avenues to be prepared and be successful, and I think a lot of times you don't understand why you are taking one class to do something else. And I think when people see that algebra could help get them a successful career in construction, then they would understand why algebra is important. If you are involved in English and you want to be a lawyer, well, you understand the importance of that. So I think getting students out in the community will help them improve their education and improve their career prospects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Kennedy.
So being a board member requires a commitment of time. And sometime that time's during the day, but it's always twice a month, 4:30. So you're leaving your office. I know where your office is, probably by 4 if you're going to drive too fast. And is this something that you're able, a time commitment that you're able to make?
Before I submitted my application, I spoke with my employers and made sure that I had to get sign off from them first. That's where my primary paycheck comes from. I know the school board pays a nice little stipend,
huge.
But certainly enough to pay your mortgage.
It was probably a good move, by the
About
way.
anything else, but yeah. So I talked to them, and they understood the time commitment, and I understand the meetings go late, and you might have something unique like a Friday night, meeting that goes late into the evening. But I would be prepared and willing and happy to make that investment of time and resources.
Okay. You've spoken a lot about career technical education. A lot of our career technical education programs, particularly you mentioned specifically the building trades, a lot of those types of trades and those types of programs have been significantly cut and don't even exist in a lot of circumstances. How do we do that under this current budget, or do you have any ideas, or how do you make that a priority?
Well, I think it is important to make it a priority because I think knowing that 20% of students that are in 9th grade today, only 20% of them are going to graduate with a 4-year college degree. So the fact is, what do we do to help make the other 80% successful? Some of them you might encourage to go to college. That's the right thing for them. But some kind of post-secondary experience is really important. So being able to show students at an earlier age what kind of careers are available and trying to start to get those skills. And I think it is obviously challenging. I know a lot of the career tech teachers personally, and I know a lot of times those are the first programs that are closed, and there's a dearth of teachers that are in that career field right now, and then there needs to be more. So I would look for partnership opportunities in the community. The same I mentioned with Katrina, maybe there's an opportunity for students to partner in the community, so they're out working with people that are, if they're doing construction trades, maybe they could be involved in an apprenticeship program, or look at people who are apprenticeship teachers to come into the school and volunteer or partner with a teacher, as that's appropriate, and to do other kinds of career mentoring. So I think really looking at career partnerships in the community is really probably the best opportunity until the budget picture allows for a better, more permanent solution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson, for coming down and spending your evening with us. Earlier this evening, I was give a short summary about the meaning of Ed Code 5091. And there is a strong likelihood that following a provisional appointment, if we make a provisional appointment, that a petition will be filed with the County Board of County Office of Education Superintendent. Thank you. So at best, the provisional appointment hypothesizing that the petition is valid, will only last 60 days. And then during the period of time when the matter goes on the ballot, the provisional appointment will be invalidated, or you'll be would be stepping down. So, would you plan to campaign for the seat if that were the scenario?
Running for office is something that I have not really considered. And I've worked on many, many campaigns over many, many years, and I understand what it takes to do that. I would be honored to be able to serve on this board, and an appointment was an opportunity to do that. Frankly, is a more direct method of doing that. I suppose that if in the 2 months if I was selected to be a board member in the 2 months that I served, after talking to people in the community, that there was support for me, from the community moving forward, that I would entertain campaigning and doing all that's necessary, raising the money, and that's a very large time commitment. That would make me, require me to go back to my employer, and that would be a change in the bargain that they made with me. So it's not something that I would want to pursue, and it would be unlikely that I would have run for this seat if it was in the general election. I probably would have just worked with someone who I thought could be a great representative. Not that I think that I would not be a great representative, but I'm just wasn't prepared to get involved in elections at this point in my life and career.
Thank you. Switching over to budgets, over the last 10 years, this school district has had to trim its budget by $200 million plus. We are faced with difficult decisions constantly regarding budget, and so school closures might be on the table. What are your thoughts about school closures, and what could you contribute into that discussion of that issue?
I think clearly it's important that it should be a last priority, but the way to do it the right way is just to have a very transparent and open process with clear parameters and guidelines of how you make that selection. So you try to take the emotional aspect out of it as much as possible so the whole community understands what the parameters are for making those choices.
My turn. I'll change up the lineup of my questioning. For me, being a parent has actually contributed to some of the successes of being in touch with the community. And so how would you ensure that you keep your finger on the pulse of what your community, specifically the parents, are saying about the types of education that their children are receiving in the diverse area that you represent?
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to stay involved in a lot of things I'm doing now. If I was to be selected, I most likely would give up the commission slot of the Parks and Recreation Commission so someone else could be appointed, but that has given me an opportunity to meet with a lot of parents and residents in my neighborhood in Area 1, and I'd look for other opportunities like that to get involved. I know that there's probably no shortage of people contacting you from the area that you represent, and I imagine that I would get a lot of input that way, but I'd also want to go seek the people who aren't the ones that are calling me or sending me emails or grabbing me at the grocery store. So I would go out to the schools, and I believe on hands-on politicking from the things that I've done in the past. I would enjoy being at the schools when the parents drop off their kids or pick them up at the end of the day when they have some time to meet, and I would very likely be willing to set up a table and have some set times. So I know there's not a lot of staff support at the district level for the board members. There's not a person who's taking the phone call. You don't have staff here, so you really have to be kind of a one-person show. But I think if there was a set time where parents knew where I was going to be so they'd have an opportunity to talk to me, that would be the way that I would get input and stay in touch. Besides being involved in the activities of the students, I do a lot of volunteer work, as I mentioned, with the American Legion and youth and government programs. I would certainly continue that, and I think that's something I've done for over 2 decades. I would obviously consider, or I would continue to do that.
Okay. Area 1 is extremely diverse. You have diversity in ethnicities, you have diversity in social economic statuses, and oftentimes some of those present competing priorities. How would you ensure that that district area would be equitable in terms of access to education?
I mean, I think that's critical. As someone who, the first person in my family to go to college and graduate, I certainly didn't come from privileged backgrounds. I paid for my own way through college and, got no money from my family because they couldn't afford it. But education gave me the leg up. So I believe in it, fairness, and you have to support all folks, the people that don't have as many resources, but you also can't forget the high achieving students who are fortunate enough to come from a good background. You want to make sure there's a balance for everybody to be successful, on both sides.
Thank you. Vice President Cunha.
Thank you for being here tonight. In regard to the school closure, you talked about parameters and guidelines. Do you believe that academic achievement levels of schools should be looked at when deciding whether to close those schools?
I would think that would be a fair parameter to have listed. If we were going to look at 10 or 15 different characteristics of each school, I think that's reasonable to have that be listed as one of the parameters.
And I was wondering about your thoughts on teacher evaluation systems and if you think that test scores should be included in the evaluation of teachers.
I note that at LAUSD, the teachers union in the district just brokered a deal to have that be part of the scoring system. I would support test scores being part of the scoring system, but I think it would need to be a minimal part because the school teacher can only account for so much work that goes into the student. I mean, if you had a baseline score when a student enters the class and when the student leaves, some of that hopefully would be attributable to the teacher and the teacher's good work. But there's a lot of parameters that a parent, that a teacher can't control, whether the student is fed every day, what kind of environment they live in, is it, are they even supervised at all? They have parents reading to them, or do they even have parents? Are they single parents? There's so many pieces that are outside the teacher's control. I think you have to be very careful just to make sure that there's a fair measurement, and maybe that includes looking at, the background of the student too. I mean, I believe, there needs to be accountability for teachers, and but you have to be fair too to the teachers and make sure that you're really looking at a whole fair system.
What do you think the role of a board member is in raising academic achievement levels for students in the district?
Part of your responsibility.
What specifically would you do?
I think looking at the baselines of what the scores are for the school district as a whole, everybody's responsible for trying to increase the academic, ratio. I think graduation rates need to be part of that, and I don't think that's been part of it until just recently. I know that was just added into the parameters of the scores that schools get, what their graduation rates are. I was glad to see that. And I think as a school board member, everyone's personally responsible for that being kind of part of the grade that, that you're going to get every 4 years when you're up for election. If you decide that you would want to run again, that it'd be fair for folks to look and see if the schools have prospered, or, that everyone has to take responsibility and accountability. I think, if there's transparency and accountability, it's a positive thing for everybody because it helps people focus and agree on what the correct parameters are. I have a little bit of work with labor unions in my background. I've done some work. I understand what collective bargaining rights are, and I think having a clear process is positive for everybody that's involved. So I think that would apply to the board members as well.
Thank you. Member Arroyo.
Thank you for being here. Question number one, what do you think is the role of the board member?
I think the board member first is responsible to the students that are in your district, and second to the families and the parents, and third, really to the entire district. And as I mentioned, the majority of people that live in, probably any one of the districts don't have kids in school. Yet, I do not have children. I'm not planning on having children. Yet I'm paying taxes to provide for the education for my neighbors' children. I'm happy to do it. I understand that it's something that lifts everybody up, so I think the school board member is responsible to the students that come from the district first, and the parents, and then the entire district.
Okay, thank you. And then, let's see, what are the biggest challenges that you see in the district? And if you can name any specifically that you see that are specific attention that we need to focus on.
Well, one, looking at the budget, obviously, budget, problems are difficult for every government entity. Being on the Parks Commission, we've chopped our budget in half just in the short amount of time, the 3 years that I've been there. And that's recognized, you can recognize it in the parks. I think, a huge increase in healthcare costs. Everybody's facing that same kind of increase. The district has over 4,000 employees. That's a big cost that really there's no end in sight. So how do you maybe bend the cost curve? I think that'd be very important to work on wellness programs with the staff and try to be involved in what's happening there to try to encourage, more healthy living and try to help keep the healthcare costs down. And I look at the trends in fitness and obesity levels of the students. There's been a precipitous drop in the last 4 years. Of the fifth graders, less than half pass the fitness test. It's not unique to Sacramento. It's what's happening across the state, and some districts have it even worse. And obesity is an epidemic right now that's still trending up. And I think if you're going to address that, even though education has to be primary, I think there's a role to be played by the schools too in trying to teach healthy lifestyles and healthy living, teach students how to read a nutrition label and what it means to take in more calories than you expend. You can be, we can be helpful in trying to bend that curve and try to help people lead healthy lives and not have a lifetime of chronic illnesses that are going to cost them quality of life, a lot of money, and cost society a lot of money. It would do everybody a big favor.
Okay, and then who would be your strongest allies in getting things done or partnering as a board member, internally, outside, wherever?
Community.
Good answer. That's okay.
Saved by the bell.
I didn't realize that we are now. That's okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Member Pritchett.
I actually would like to hear the answer to that question, so if you could.
Sure. I think what's really important to me, my current occupation in healthcare, I think I would lean a lot on the health community. I do a lot of work with UC Davis and the medical students that are there. I'm working on a project at UC San Diego with the students there, go and partner with high schools and come and teach students how to do healthy living. And then the high school students actually go teach the junior high and the elementary students what it is to be healthy and how to learn how to count calories and to do all those kinds of things. And we're creating a lesson plan working with Superintendent Torlickson's office. That would be a great program that Sacramento could consider, and I understand there's tight budgets, but because of the work that I've done with the state superintendent, I would lean on the resources that are there. They're already paying for it. There's probably a lot of things that are in the Department of Education that we could use, and I'd like to partner. We have an amazing healthcare economy in Sacramento that's going to continue to grow. It's a great place for careers, and I'd like to expose students to careers in healthcare, whether they want to be doctors, nurses, or administration. There's so many jobs there. So I think I would lean on those areas.
Great. Can you tell me some of the areas that you would focus on community engagement if appointed to this position?
Mm-hmm. I'm really interested in working with the community. I think there's so many different opportunities. One project I'm helping out with the Sacramento Medical Society is called Walk with the Docs. We have volunteer doctors that we're setting up programs. And if you've seen the billboards around town, we get the billboards donated by one of the billboard companies. And we're doing it in 4 different communities around the state. Sacramento is one of them. And we have volunteer doctors that come and we meet at a park and we advertise it, and people can just come and meet with doctors and walk around and learn why it's important to be healthy and to do things like that. I would like to do programs that are engaging parents and engaging students in activities like that. The work that I've done at the parks, we do park cleanups every quarter at Southside Park, and that's the kind of thing that brings people together. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. And I look at schools. There was a piece of legislation I had worked on earlier when I worked in the speaker's office with the previous speaker to use joint use facilities and have the schools partner with the cities and parks and have the money. It was going to come from the state allocation board. There was going to be a fund set aside. It actually passed the legislature with overwhelming votes through both houses, but it was vetoed by then Governor Davis. Very short-sighted, but I think our schools are an underused asset and can be a key part of the community. And when there's so many students that don't have the best home environment, to be able to stay at school longer, whether we can figure out after-school programs or other kinds of care or education that can happen there. And if it's bringing in community partners to help provide those resources, I think that'd be a great opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, we have concluded all of our questions. Now it's your 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. I am a true believer in public service and giving back. The chance to serve as a school board member is a great way to give back, and I believe would provide a helpful perspective to complement the strengths of the board members who are already serving. You know, my work in career technical education, apprenticeship, healthcare, and Superintendent Torlickson's Team California for Healthy Kids would be an asset to the board and beneficial to the students. My volunteer work in higher education with Occidental College and USC has shown me the value of higher education and the importance of continued education. And I'd like to bring that perspective to the board and help work to increase graduation rates. I'm very interested in that. I'm very concerned about the rapid increase in childhood obesity and the precipitous drop in our children's health care. I think that's a very important issue to work on. And I would like to work on bettering the fitness levels and the health care and looking at decreasing. You know, we have a decrease in fitness levels and an increase in students' weight. You know, I'd like to work on physical fitness for students and health and wellness programs for the staff. My work for unions could be helpful in bettering relations and cooperation with the board and the district and the unions that are involved. I think I bring a good perspective on that. I'm someone who is very straightforward and even-tempered, and someone who is a collaborative worker. I'm dedicated and hardworking, and I think I'd bring that to the board, and it would be an asset to all of you to be able to do and continue that work. I thank you for the opportunity to apply and would very much appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Now, we would like to invite you to either sit in the audience or if you choose to, you can skedaddle.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Our next up is Gwinnett Bird, and because of the late hour, come on down.